Trust. A little word with a lot of implications. And there are 1,000 different directions that we could go in talking about trust. But right now, I want to focus on specifically the topic of self-trust. It's been coming up a lot in the work that I've been doing with clients and also in my own life. It's been a topic of mine for a very, very long time. I can remember when I was first starting out as a designer in Boston. I had the honor of working with some amazing interior architects, and I can remember sitting in these meetings, and we would have tons of ideas laid out in front of us. And at some point in time, the lead designer would say, "We're going in this direction. This is where we're going." And I can remember being in awe, feeling like, how do they know? How do they know what's the right way to go? How do they trust themselves so much to make this decision that impacts not just what we as a team have to do, but impacts this huge company that we're working for? How do they have that trust? And I can remember developing this little visual in my head that they must have some kind of switch. When they're looking at over all the options, then suddenly their eyes lock on one, and there's just this moment where they say, yes, this is the right one. And I've had that kind of subconsciously in my head for a very long time. And it wasn't until recently that I started recognizing something quite different behind the role of self-trust. I managed to come up with a whole lot of ways to move forward without feeling like I really had this switch that some other people just seemed to have. I would move forward through discomfort. I would ask the advice and opinions of lots of people, because then, it was like, what was the game show where you could call a friend or you could take a poll of the audience? I figured that increased my chances of making the right decision. And it wasn't until about 6 months ago, so relatively recently, that I was reading a book called Conscious Language, which I'll put the details below, but it was an absolutely beautiful book. And I'm reading through one of the chapters, and the author talks about the word want. And in the book, he says, where do you find yourself saying a certain sentence about what you want in your life? And immediately, this sentence came up that I've been repeating in my mind for years. I want to fully trust myself. I was proud of myself, yes. And he said, okay, so whenever we look at the origin of want, we might think that it's about choice. We might think that it's about a positive action, something that we choose for our lives. But in fact, the word itself implies not having. If I want love, then it means I don't have it and I want it. If I want a piece of chocolate, it means I don't have it and I want it in my mouth. And he said, what happens when you replace the word want with choose? I said, all right, I'll give it a try. And so I said out loud, I choose to trust myself. And I still get a little bit emotional right now because this wave of truth, or whatever it was, I still have no idea, just washed over me. And I knew that that was real. And I knew that this idea that I had held on to for a long time, this certainty switch, was not reality, at least not for self-trust. That instead, I recognized in that moment that trusting myself is a choice. And it doesn't mean that we'll always get it right. It doesn't even mean that it's the right answer. It might just be the right thing that we need in that moment to learn a certain lesson. And I've seen the impact of this in my life, and I'm seeing it in my client's life as I share this, that when we recognize that trust isn't just the magic switch, but it's a choice, then we take ownership once again of our actions. Not believing that some magical thing inside of us knows the right answer, but that we ourselves, the one that's asking the question, gets to choose the right answer. So where in your life right now are you hesitating? Feeling like you don't really trust yourself because you don't have all of the puzzle pieces laid out in front of you, or total certainty that the move that you want to make or that you're feeling pulled to make is the right decision. What happens when you choose to trust yourself?